Hello, and welcome back to my channel. I'm your host and narrator, Giles with a J, and we're on Season 21, Family Annihilators Part 2. You can check out Season 4 Family Annihilators. There's a link to the playlist in the description. If you enjoy true crime, subscribe and hit the notification button so you never miss an episode. You can also hit like or leave me a comment. Now, on with the show. In 2001, authorities arrived at the home of the Bluestone family to find multiple people dead and even more injured. Everyone was shocked to learn that Karl Bluestone had killed his wife and two of his 4 children before killing himself, as they believed that the Bluestones were a picture-perfect family. They quickly learned that not only had the family been experiencing domestic violence, but that the authorities knew about it and had done nothing to stop it. This is Monsters. Karl Bluestone was born in 1965 in Kent, England. It's been reported that he was friendly in his youth and regularly volunteered in the community. He joined the Kent police force in 1987 and had married a woman who isn't identified in any source. He had a daughter named Samantha with that woman before they divorced for unknown reasons. There was no mention of domestic abuse in that marriage, but there definitely was in his second marriage. He had gone on to marry Jill, and very quickly that marriage turned violent. It seems that Jill was already pregnant with their first child when the couple got married in or around 1994. She was a successful member of the Essex County Council and had been promoted during the time they were married. She had a higher annual salary than her husband, and some speculate that there was some jealousy in him regarding that fact. Karl had been a police constable for 7 years by the time they married, and he was well liked by his peers and had no negative marks on his record. He worked on a tactical team that would carry out more high-risk tasks amongst the police force. It was only weeks after they got married that Karl attacked Jill, who was 5 months pregnant at the time. Karl had kicked his wife in the stomach and was arrested, but not charged because Jill declined to press charges. He was arrested again in 1999, that time for attacking Jill with a meat cleaver and attempting to sexually assault her. Again, Jill declined to press charges. Only a few weeks later, there was another altercation and Jill got into her vehicle in an attempt to get away, but Karl smashed the windshield. Then he went back into the house and started throwing things around, like a toddler having a tantrum. Unfortunately, one of his children was in the path of something he threw and received a minor injury. He was arrested, but while being driven to the police station, he was able to take a bunch of pills and was rushed to the hospital. It's unclear why someone who was under arrest and in a police car had access to a bunch of pills, but here we are. He took 14 weeks of sick leave after that, and social services investigated, but determined there was insufficient evidence to take the case further. They determined that he could return to work at the end of those 14 weeks. Now, it's very unlikely that those were the only instances of domestic abuse happening in the Bluestone household. They were just the ones that police responded to. Karl was said to have been controlling, and some of his co-workers said that it was no secret that he slept with other women. Most people, though, said Karl was a nice guy and a good police constable. Their neighbors said the family seemed very happy, and their nanny would say, quote, "They seem to be the perfect family with 2 highly successful parents and 4 lovely children." But that's a common view of a dysfunctional family to the outside world. Most abusers are very good at playing the nice guy to people around them, and the abused tend to hide the situation out of fear. So many times, a relationship that's abusive behind closed doors very much looks like the picture-perfect family to the outside world. It may be why people like myself, and probably many of you who are watching or listening, tend to become suspicious of a relationship that seems too perfect. Fortunately, despite our suspicious natures, there are families that are perfectly healthy and happy. It's not a terrible thing to stay vigilant, though. In the years leading up to the murders, Karl became increasingly unhappy that Jill was making more money than he was. She had been advancing in her career while he had not had a promotion in quite a while. It's not uncommon for controlling men to feel emasculated by their wives making more money than them. They see their employment as a sign of who has more control of the family, and of course, to them, they were the only one who should have control. He also became paranoid that Jill was having an affair with a coworker. It's very common for a person who cheats on their partner to believe that their partner is also cheating on them. It's a psychological behavior where someone attributes their own negative actions onto someone else. It's generally done to minimize their own transgressions by believing their partner is also being unfaithful. It can also be a way for the cheater to take the focus off of themselves, as their partner has to focus on defending their own actions. There's actually a psychological disorder called Othello syndrome, which causes the sufferer to have obsessive, intrusive thoughts that their partner is being unfaithful. Now, it's unlikely that Karl was suffering from Othello syndrome, as that usually doesn't mean the sufferer is cheating themselves. They have just become convinced their partner is cheating for no verifiable reason. It sounds much more likely that Karl was projecting due to his own unfaithfulness. Jill told a friend that she believed that Karl had been recording their conversations and she felt increasingly unsafe. Jill had at one point told her sister-in-law that it was safer to string Karl along than to leave him, but she eventually had enough. His infidelity had gotten to the point that he had spent the previous Christmas holiday with a girlfriend instead of his family. In June of 2001, Jill told Karl that she intended to leave him and take the kids. He responded by strangling her to the point of unconsciousness. At some point during the attack, he told her, quote, "There is no divorce. The only way out is death." On August 28, 2001, Karl went to work as usual, and after his shift, he went to the local pub with some colleagues. After a few pints, he went home and, as far as anyone else knew, was finishing out his day like any other. But this wasn't any other day, because Karl seems to have already decided it was going to be the last day of his and his family's lives. Earlier that day, Karl had stopped into a local building supplier and purchased a length of rope. The shop assistant asked him what the rope was for, and Karl explained that he was going to lift some furniture. When the assistant asked him the weight of the furniture, Karl responded, quote, "My weight." With that purchase and what the rope ended up being used for, it was clear that Karl had planned out the attack. It was learned that Karl had sat down on the couch and watched his favorite television show before starting an argument with Jill. It's been reported that Karl said, quote, "I heard about you today." But it's unknown what that meant. Possibly something to do with the recordings he was allegedly making. That was when he began attacking her with a hammer, and at the same time he grabbed their 6-year-old daughter Jessica and slammed her head into the floor. She managed to escape and run out of the house. She would later say that her mother had told her to run and get the police, so we know Jill was still alive at that point. The family lived in a semi-detached house, and Jessica went to their neighbor and banged on the door. The resident, Ernest Lane, opened the door to see a terrified young girl who said, quote, "My daddy is hitting my mummy. Please call the police." After Ernest made the call, Jessica went on to say, quote, "Daddy banged my head on the wooden floor. I cannot get Mummy out of my mind. She had blood coming out of her head. I don't want Daddy to kill Mummy." Investigators estimate that Jill had received about 10 blows to the head with the hammer by then. When Jessica escaped, he went on to attack their 3 other children. He struck them all repeatedly in the head with the hammer, with 3-year-old Henry receiving the worst of it, 10 blows to the little boy's head. Then Karl returned to Jill, hit her about 3 more times with the hammer, and then struck her in the neck with the claw end of the tool. Police arrived at the scene expecting another case of domestic violence, but were met with a horrific scene. They found Jill lying dead on the floor in a pool of her own blood. Then they found 3-year-old Henry at the foot of the stairs, in his pajamas. He had been bludgeoned 10 times and was already dead. Upstairs, 7-year-old Jack was still in the bottom bunk of his bed, curled up in the fetal position. He was severely injured, as was 18-month-old Chandler, who was found in his crib in a different room. The one person the constables couldn't find, though, was Karl. The neighbor, Ernest, had taken a look at the house after he had phoned the police, and he heard some movement in the garage. He passed that information along to the constables on the scene, and it was there that they found the body of Karl. He had used the rope he had purchased earlier to hang himself. Jessica, Jack, and Chandler were all rushed to the hospital, where Jessica and Jack recovered from their wounds. Sadly, Chandler died at the hospital. Psychologists have said that the murder weapon used showed that he had an exceptional amount of rage towards his family. Studies have shown that the most common method of murder with family annihilators was stabbing, followed by carbon monoxide poisoning. Other common methods are suffocation or arson. A lot of those are ways that someone can kill while staying fairly detached. Stabbing is more personal but can still be carried out much more quickly. To beat someone to death with a hammer needs so much personal rage toward the victim. On top of that, family annihilators who are the husband and father commonly commit murders because the marriage is in danger of ending and they have the mentality that they don't want anyone else to have their wife or family. It's a form of possession, and when they decide to end their life, which happens in over 80% of male family annihilator cases, they believe they need to take their family with them. Of course, in that case, Karl could have found a quick and less painful way to kill his family, but he chose to beat them repeatedly with a hammer. It seemed as though Karl blamed his wife and children for the breakdown in his life and took his rage out on them. With the perpetrator dead, a Gravesend County Court held an inquest to determine what could have been done to prevent the tragedy. It was identified that 4 incidents of domestic violence perpetrated by Karl Bluestone were brought to the attention of the Kent County Constabulary, and all were recorded. In 2 of those incidents, reference was made to the Crown Prosecution Service, who decided to take no further action. No disciplinary action was undertaken in relation to any of the incidents. It's easy to say in hindsight that the authorities should have acted in some way to prevent the murders, but it's not guaranteed that they could have been prevented. I agree that Karl should have suffered consequences for his actions, but that might have only sped up the ultimate tragedy that ended up happening. It's possible that they could have been able to get Karl some type of mental health treatment, but if Karl wasn't open to that, he wouldn't have changed. His anger could have risen more quickly, escalating the domestic violence to murder sooner than it happened. Again, I do believe that Karl's domestic violence arrests should have been taken more seriously, but it's impossible to say how things would have changed if they had been. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we can never know exactly why Karl Bluestone did what he did, and we can never know for sure what would have been different if authorities had taken different action. The Kent Police Department released a statement saying, quote, "An interagency review into the events leading up to the murders was commissioned, and concluded amongst other findings that there were missed opportunities for early intervention to break the cycle of violence." It seems that the Association of Chief Police Officers have implemented suggestions in order to minimize the risk of further tragedies and highlight the lessons to be learned from this particular case. We cannot predict the future, but we can take reports of domestic abuse more seriously to help reduce the amount of abusers who go full monster and resort to murder. Thanks so much for letting me tell you this story. If you're a fan of true crime, hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss an episode. You can also hit like or leave a comment. If you'd like to support the show, check out our merchandise at thisismonsters.com. The link is in the description. Thanks again, and be safe.